الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول النبي الكريم. So previously, last couple of weeks, we've been discussing related to fasting and the fiqh related to fasting. And we had mentioned a few different ahkam related to it. And so we move on and we discuss some other masail, inshallah. He begins, وَالْكَفَارَةُ مِثْلُ كَفَارَةِ الظِّهَارِ. So previously we discussed about those things which would necessitate qada and those things which would necessitate kafara, or meaning those things which necessitate a person making up that one fast, or kafara which would necessitate someone having to repeat the entire, or not only qada but also do kafara. Now kafara, he explains that kafara mithlu kafarat al-zihar, that is just like the kafara al-zihar. Now the explanation of that is that it's actually a funny story where the Prophet ﷺ, once he was sitting and a Bedouin came to him, and the Bedouin said, "Ya Rasulullah, I'm destroyed. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "What's wrong?" And so he says, the Bedouin, he says that, "Ya Rasulullah, I had relations with my wife during the day of Ramadan intentionally, right? Intentionally during the day of Ramadan, I had relations with my wife." So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Free a slave." So this is based on this hadith, we understand the ruling of what you're supposed to do if you break your fast intentionally in the month of Ramadan. So he says, free a slave, which of course is not really applicable today, but at that time it was applicable. And so he said, free a slave. And so the person, he says, I don't have any money. I have no money to free a slave. So then the Prophet he says, okay, now you should fast for 60 days consecutively. Right? Fast for 60 days consecutively. And so this is what the ruling is for us, that a person must fast 60 days consecutively if someone breaks their fast, one day fast intentionally. So yes, it's of course a very difficult and it's a very big punishment for someone who breaks their fast intentionally, but that's the objective, that a person should not miss or should not break their fast intentionally without any reason. So again, the Prophet he said, a fast for 60 days. Now the story itself is a bit funny, right? So then the Sahabi, this Bedouin, he says, Ya Rasulullah, I mean, this happened because I was fasting. Now you're telling me to fast 60 days consecutively. How will I do it, right? So then the Prophet he laughs, and so he says that, fine, why don't you go and feed 60 people? He says that feed 60 people. And so he says, I don't have that money. He says, I don't have the money to feed 60 people. So then the Prophet remains silent. And within that time, someone comes and he brings a large number of dates for the Prophet and he gives it to the Prophet. So the Prophet he says, where is that person? And so that person, he says, I'm here. He says, here, go and take these dates and go distribute it to 60 people. Right? So the rule is that you are supposed to distribute for lunch and dinner for 60 people. Lunch and dinner for 60 people. This is the next order of what you're supposed to do. So then this person, he takes those dates, he says, Ala afqar minni, he says, I should donate this to someone who's poorer than me. He says, I swear there's no one who's poorer than me in the entire Medina. No one is poorer than me. So then the Prophet, he smiles, he laughs, and he says, fine, you take the dates and you go away, essentially go away, but this is only for you. He says, the Prophet, he says that this is only for you, right? This concession is only given for you. For everyone else, it's the standard. So again, if obviously there are no slaves, so we are not required or we are not commanded to free a slave. After that, the number one expiation is to fast for 60 days consecutively. Now, the thing is that some people, they have this misconception. They think that you have the option to choose either you fast 60 days or you feed 60 people. That is not the case. Here, the rule is you must fast 60 days. And if you're not physically able to fast 60 days, then you can go and feed 60 people, right? Hopefully that makes sense, right? Meaning the rule is you must fast 60 days for breaking one fast of Ramadan. If you are not able to do so at all, you physically cannot fast, then you can, feed someone else, or you can give them the money, the equivalency in money. So for example, either you feed 60 people lunch and dinner, or you feed one person 60 days, or you give them the money equivalent to that amount. All right, and the equivalency is about $8 more or less per meal, right? So that's how much you would give per meal. And so this is the rule related to kafara, right? And so you should never, ever, ever intentionally break a fast, because you don't want to have to deal with all of this. It's a lot of it's a lot of difficulty. And so therefore, this is the incident related to kafara. He continues, وَمَنْ جَامَعَ فِيمَا دُونَ الْفَرْجِ فَأَنْزَلَ فَعَلَيْهِ الْقَضَاءُ وَلَا كَفَّارَةَ عَلَيْهِ. And of course, this is for a bit more mature audience, but he says that the one who has relations with his spouse, but it's not in the private area, then you must only give qada, no kafara. From here, we also understand the ruling of masturbation, that the ruling is that qada will be necessary, not kafara. Which, of course, again, at the end of the day, it is haram. A person should not be doing this, but if someone does, only qada is necessary, not kafara. Okay, meaning that day, if someone masturbates and they ejaculate, then that fast will break. That fast will break, and then they must make qada of that fast after Ramadan. Okay, so you cannot masturbate during Ramadan and keep that fast. وَلَيْسَ فِي إِفْسَادِ الصَّوْمِ فِي غَيْرِ رَمَضَانَ كَفَّارَةٌ. He says that in breaking any of the fast outside of the fast of Ramadan, there's no kafara. So for example, as I mentioned in the beginning, that there are different types of fasts, right? There are some fasts that you make wajib on yourself, that you say, I swear I'll fast on this day, for example. Then you make it wajib on yourself. Or there are other fasts, but none of those fasts, if you break them, there's no kafara for any of those fasts. Instead, all you would do is qada. So for example, let's say, you started fasting because of a wajib fast. You started fasting and you decided to break it in between for whatever reason, right? You decided to break it. There's no kafara. All you would have to do is make qada of that one day. Okay, so kafara is only for the fasts of Ramadan. وَمَنْ احْتَقَنَ. Any questions so far? So far, this is clarified. This is clear. All right. وَمَنْ احْتَقَنَ أَوْ اسْتَعْطَى أَوْ أَقْطَرَ فِي أُذُنِهِ. Let's go through each one. The one who applies something inside his private area, whether in the front or the back, whatever it is, or the person, they apply some medicine in the nose, أو أقطر في أذنه. Now here, the scholar, he mentions that, or if a person, they put any eardrops or any drops into the ears, أو دواء جائفة أو آمة بدواء رطب, or they inject themselves with something that reaches their stomach. In that case, فوصل إلى جوفه أو دماغه أفطر. And if that amount reaches to, if that medicine or something, that nutrition reaches his stomach, then he will have to break his fast, and he has to do qada, no kafara. I will explain. So essentially, if someone puts any medication or anything either through their nose, for example, you have the nasal sprays, that will necessitate qada. Okay, if someone uses the nasal spray, this will be qada. Or for example, someone uses medicine in their urethra or some other body part, then that will necessitate qada. Essentially, any pathway that leads to the stomach, okay, any pathway that leads to the stomach, qada will be necessary for that. So for example, the nostril, right? Now, according to this scholar, again, this is almost 1,000 years old, right? This research is almost 1,000 years old. And so this scholar, he says that, or if a person, drops anything into the ears, whereas now the scholars, we understand that eardrops don't have a direct connection with the stomach. And so therefore, so long as a person's eardrum is not perforated, I mean, it's not broken, then there's no connection to the stomach. And so therefore, you can use eardrops without any issues while you're fasting. But as for nasal sprays or those types of things, those are not valid. Eye drops are also fine. Eye drops are also fine. Then he talks about any type of medication which reaches the stomach. So for example, if someone were to use an IV drip, an IV does not break your fast. Again, I get this question very, very, very frequently. IV drips do not break your fast. Also, injections do not break your fast. So long as the injection is done into a vein or a muscle or something like that, not into the stomach. If something is injected directly into the stomach, then that breaks the fast. But otherwise, this will not break the fast. Questions? Okay. وإن أفطر في إحليله لم يفطر عند أبي حنيفة محمد رحمه الله وقال أبو يوسف يفطر. According to the Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Muhammad, they say that if someone drops into the urethra, it does not break the fast. And this is the more correct opinion, that that if someone drops into the urethra, it does not break the fast. Right. So moving forward, ومن ذاق شيئا بفمه لم يفطر ويكره له ذلك. If someone tastes something, and now we're getting, so we discussed those things that break the fast. Now we're going to get into those things which are makruh, which are disliked to do while fasting. So the first is tasting something. It's makruh to taste anything while fasting. So for example, sometimes people, they're cooking and then they say, okay, let me just taste it. So that itself is makruh, right? Even if you spit it out, even if you're not like swallowing it, but you're just tasting it, your taste buds taste it, that is makruh. And so therefore you should not do that. As much as possible, you leave it out, okay? And you shouldn't do that. So now this rule also applies to toothpaste, right? And I mentioned this last week as well, right? That if a person brushes their teeth, which we should all do, we should brush with what? Miswak. What else? I mentioned herbal toothpaste, sorry. But specifically, there was a company, it's called Tom's of Maine. But yes, herbal toothpaste. That's the thing. A natural herbal toothpaste, which does not have any added flavors. If you use that during fasting, it is not makruh. But if you use Colgate, Crest, and the ones that have all the fluoride and all the other flavors in it, then your fast or that action will be makruh. Doing that will be makruh, and it is not good to do, and you should not maintain this. If you continue to do it, you may get some sins for it, right? And this is, of course, under the assumption that the toothpaste does not go down your throat. Under the assumption that the toothpaste will not go down your throat. So therefore, we should use the natural toothpaste. There's about 10 days left for Ramadan. We should, if we have not yet obtained the natural toothpaste, we should obtain the natural herbal toothpaste. And I shared a link on Ziansar. I shared it with the coupon, with the deal on Amazon for that toothpaste. But anyways, you can get it from Walgreens, Walmart, from any store. Yes, our scholars now, we look after people's wealth and deen, right? We look after both. Anyways, moving forward, right? So tasting something is makruh while you're fasting, but it does not break the fast. Yes.
You just forget about toothpaste before eating in the morning.
Yes, that's fine, right? That's fine. But the problem is that what happens is we have a long day, right? For example, suhoor is like, let's say 5 something, right? And then by 12 or 1 p.m., let's say your breath is not smelling good. So what are you going to do? You're allowed to brush your teeth so long as it does not, of course, go down your throat, and you use the natural toothpaste. And the natural toothpaste I recommended last week was Tom's of Maine. Tom's of Maine is a natural toothpaste, and it's widely accessible. So you should get that toothpaste, and you can brush your teeth with that while fasting as well. And of course, you should use miswak and whatever else, maintain your cleanliness, and so that your breath smells good. ويكره للمرأة أن تمضغ لصبيها الطعام إذا كان لها منه بد. And so maybe at that time, there was a concept where the woman would sometimes chew some types of food for the baby. And sometimes even nowadays, mothers do it, where they may chew something and then give it to the baby. So that's makruh also, essentially putting something in your mouth and then, giving it to the child or something. So long as there's an alternative, we should go towards the alternative. Meaning if there's like some other way, some machine, you can crush it up or whatever else, you should use that. Nowadays, we have many different machines. Again, at that time, they didn't have these things. Right? He says that chewing on this ilk. Ilk is like this substance that was used to make their breath smell good. So you can assume that not gum, but it's something similar, right? That it would be used to smell, or their mouth would be refreshed and it would smell good. So he says that it's makruh here to do it. And then so therefore we understand that you shouldn't be putting anything into your mouth. And gum especially, you should not be putting, because gum, you can swallow the taste and the ingredients that come from the gum. You swallow that'll break your fast, right? But other than that, If you chew on, like, for example, some people have a bad habit of chewing on plastic, right? Or some people have a bad habit of chewing on like rubber or their nails or something, right? This is makruh. You should not do this. While you're fasting, you should not do this. You shouldn't do this regularly, but more so while you're fasting, you should not be chewing on anything. Yes, so I had mentioned the mas'ala. The question is about sometimes ladies taste the food and spit it out. As I mentioned, right, just 2 lines ago, that if someone tastes the food and then spits it out, that's still makruh. It's still disliked. Generally, women should not do this. Although I know many women, they do this very frequently, where sometimes they taste the food and then they spit it out. Even then, as much as possible, don't do it, right? Put less salt or whatever it is, but it's better to do that than make it makruh. Okay, so don't or do any makruh actions. So therefore, we should not do this. Instead, estimate or guesstimate, whatever it is. Yes. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. All right. So good question. Very good question. Right. Actually, it's the next line. Let's. I'll read the next line, then I'll explain your question. Right. So he says, next line. وَمَنْ كَانَ مَرِيضًا فِي رَمَضَانَ. The one who is sick whilst in the month of Ramadan. فَخَافَ إِنْ صَامَ إِزْدَادَ مَرَضُهُ. So he fears that if he fasts, then this will increase in his sickness. If he fasts, it will increase in his sickness. أَفْطَرَ وَقَضَى. He should break his fast and then make it up later. So to explain, right? Someone, let's say they Allah Ta'ala save us all. Let's say someone gets into a car accident and they, for the month of Ramadan, they cannot fast, for example. They need a lot of medication and so on. So what happens is that they will break those days of fasting. They will not fast on those days, but they will fast later on. Okay, so that sickness is temporary. That sickness is temporary, where it's only for a couple of weeks and they're not able to fast for those couple of weeks. So they should make it up later. Many people, what they do is they just say, oh, I can't fast, so I'm just going to pay fidya. And then they forget about it. No. If you gain the ability to fast later on, you must fast later on. Does that make sense? So if you have a temporary illness, which prevents you from fasting in the blessed month of Ramadan, then you should break your fast and then make it up later. And you don't have to pay any fidya, nothing. But in the situation where a person has a permanent illness, for example, someone has diabetes, such a level of diabetes which requires them to take some form of medication constantly. For example, they must take some form of medication throughout the day. In that case, they should take the medication. They're not able to fast, and there's no real, solution to diabetes, for example, or anything, or one of those similar sicknesses. So in that case, they will just pay the fidya because they know that they will not recover or they will not cure from that diabetes, right? And so therefore, they should break the fast and then just pay the fidya for it. As for your father, can he use the injections before or after? Or no, it's required, he must do it. And it's injected directly into the stomach. Yeah. So in that case, if it's possible that he can do at night, for example, and he can sleep during the day maybe or something like that, then maybe he should do that. But if that's not possible, he needs to take it 3 times, for example, and it must be within the day and all that, then he would break the fast and he would pay fidya for that. And the fidya amount is about $8 minimum. So per fast. So per fast, he would give about $8 to the poor people, the recipients of zakat. Those people who receive zakat, they can also receive this. Inshallah, that's clarified? Okay.
Only for 1 meal or for all 3 meals?
Number 1 meal. For each meal. For each fast. Rather, what you're asking, the fidya is about $8 per fast. So, no, it's just one. So, for example, it'd be minimum, right? Yeah, it'd be minimum. It is $8 per fast. So, for example, let's take his father, 30 days times 8, you would give 240 dollars for the entire month of not being able to fast. Okay. I already spoke about the verdict of injections or IVs. That's why we need to come on time, right? But anyways, then the ruling related to injections or IVs, injections are fine so long as they're not injected into the stomach. IVs are also fine so long, IVs are generally injected into the arms, so that's also fine. So IVs are fine, injections are fine, they will not affect the fast so long as it's not being injected into the stomach. Any other questions related to medicine? That's okay, even then, right? So yes, see, look, the rule is that it is allowed, and generally most, if not all, IVs are for strength, right? They're for replenishing your whatever you need in your body, right? And so even despite that, it's still okay. The rule is that you cannot consume anything through your mouth or anything that reaches your stomach. That's impermissible. So, for example, the nasal or the mouth, that's the main pathways, for example, that reaches our stomach. And so therefore, anything that goes through that will break your fast. IVs and injections will not break your fast. Similarly, if someone is donating blood, that does not break the fast as well. So if blood is coming out of you or something is going inside of you, but it's not through the stomach, that does not affect the fast. But yes, you shouldn't play with the deen where you're like, okay, I'm going to stay on the IV all day, every day. You know, this is just playing with deen, right? So you shouldn't do that. But it's okay if you do. Let's say someone goes to the hospital for some reason and they're required to be on the drip. That's okay.
Because when you put the injection in the stomach, it's not going in the stomach, right? So what's the special ruling about the stomach? Like why it's problem?
That's just what the hadith and that's what Sharia tells us, right? So Sharia tells us that that's the part of the body that we must avoid nutrition from going into. So that's all it is. You know, it's not a logic-based argument. You know, it's not that okay based off of wherever the nutrients are going the earliest or will benefit the body the most. It's not about that. It's about what's mentioned in the hadith. Yes.
Vitamin, like vitamin D to your stomach, but it doesn't go to the stomach, it goes to your muscle. Is that the same thing as?
Where is it injected? Yeah, if it's injected into the stomach, then it doesn't matter. It still breaks your fast. Also, let's just mention one more thing related to fasting or medication. So let's say someone is in dire need of medication. Let's say, for example, someone is having an asthma attack while they're fasting, right? You should take that, for example, as I mentioned this last week, right? I mentioned this briefly as well. You should take it and then make it up later. Okay, you should take that the asthma pump and then make up that fast later. If you need to take Tylenol, for example, again, this is so the rule was right that we mentioned a person must fear that their sickness will increase or their recovery will be delayed. If a person fears that their sickness will be their sickness will increase or their recovery will be delayed, in that case, they can break the fast and they can consume whatever they need to, food or whatever else it is. Okay. Now, how will you recognize? Now, what do you consider as sickness? You know, many people they think, well, I have a slight headache. You know, I have a slight headache, so I'm just gonna break my fast. No. We're talking about like actual sicknesses that will severely affect your health. Those are actual, like very severe sicknesses. What do you recognize? How do you recognize that? Generally, through prior experience. If you know that whenever I get sick like this, for example, whenever I get this fever, if I don't take food and if I fast, I will be very, very, very sick. In that case, yes, you can break your fast and then make it up later. The best and the safest case is what? To ask the scholar. Ask the scholar, say, whoever it is, I'm feeling, I have this problem. Can I break my fast? And then I will make it up later, or what should I do in this situation? Okay, so then the scholar will assess your particular situation or your illness specifically, and then issue a ruling based on your specific illness. Okay, so yes.
Very hot, people take swimming pool or shower.
No, it's not makruh, right? But swimming pool, you should avoid it, right? Simply because when you jump into a swimming pool, water will go straight through your nostril, and that'll break your fast. right? And that's very dangerous because then kafara and all of those things come into play, right? But as for regular showers, it's not an issue. If you want to shower because it's very hot or something, that's not an issue. Thirsty. Yeah, I mean, he's right. He's right because the fact is, like, for example, your pores, they suck in water and then it does alleviate some thirst. That's still okay. Again, the objective is that it should not go directly to your stomach, through your nose or your mouth. Okay. Also, a question came about fidya, should it be local currency? Yes, it should be local currency. And as I always recommend that you should give your fidya, your zakat, I always recommend you give it overseas. I always recommend it simply because the fact is that $100 here, I mean, many people, alhamdulillah, they have a lot of government assistance and they're able to, the vast majority of people, everyone has access to, so many different things, especially when you're at a lower income bracket. Whereas in other countries, they don't have that. So my recommendation is always give your zakat, your fidya, whatever it is, to people you know. Don't give to an organization, give to people that you know back home, some relative, some friend, someone you know or someone they know, and donate that. But it will be your local currency. So it will be $8, for example, because this is where you stay. So the amount will be considered will be your currency. But obviously, when you convert $8 to whichever currency it is, you can use that. Okay, so regarding sickness, those are the rulings. Any further questions? Vomiting. So vomiting, I believe I mentioned it last week, but vomiting does not break your fast. Vomiting unintentionally, especially, does not break your fast. So if someone vomits unintentionally, does not break your fast. If someone vomits intentionally, like they put their finger or whatever, intentionally they vomit and then they swallow back, which is unlikely, then that breaks the fast. But generally, most people don't do that, right? And so therefore, vomiting generally does not break the fast. And many people, they have this misconception and they think that vomiting does break the fast. Yes.
For medical reason, is considered intentional or make a part of it or just
so long as there's a genuine medical need, only qada. You would only have to make up that one day. You don't know kafara because you have a genuine need, right? So long as you have a genuine need, you can break that fast and you will make it up after Ramadan or later on. But you would not have to give kafara for that. Yes.
Make up the kafara in like Medina or Mecca or one needed to go to like 1,000 and 1,000.
No. So that's in accordance to reward, right? Many people, there's a misconception. There are some people, even actually there was one video that was circulating where one person, he was saying that, when you have many salahs to make up, you should go to Makkah or Medina, you just pray 2 rakats and that makes up all of the prayers that you missed. It was actually a lot of people watched that video. And this is, I don't know if you guys remember, or if you guys saw that video, but that's ignorance, right? Meaning from that person, I'm saying, that was an ignorant statement. Supposedly, quote unquote, he was a scholar, but he was not, right? No scholar, no legitimate scholar would say that. But anyways, so yes, you get the reward. Of course, the reward is multiplied, but the actual obligation is not removed. So for example, yes, you pray in Makkah or Medina, you get many, many times fold the reward, but that's only for the reward, not for the actual obligation. And the wudu will not be broken if vomit full mouth. No, if you vomit full mouth, this will not break your fast. Yes. Any other questions? All right. Inshallah, we'll stop here and we will continue, inshallah, next week. Next week is our final week. And inshallah, we have a bit more to cover. Actually, we have like 3 pages left. So inshallah, next week we'll try to finish up and hopefully, inshallah, we'll be able to finish up this entire topic before Ramadan, inshallah. We have our Welcome Ramadan event, inshallah, which is the next Friday. Please, humbly requesting everyone to join, inshallah. It'll be a good event, inshallah. Hopefully, it'll prepare us for Ramadan. Ramadan is, less than 10 days away. So, inshallah, we should make our preparations, not only our physical preparation. We've all done our shoppings and all of those other things. Leave aside those things. Make your spiritual preparations, inshallah, by joining us for Friday, inshallah. It's also going to be a potluck. So if you can, please bring something, inshallah. There is a sign up. So please just sign up. That way we know and we can cater.